Hello and welcome to a very special edition of Ladies Corner with T. My name is T Adeyemo, and today we'll be interviewing a wonderful candidate from what they mean. Her name is Gabrielle Battiste, and she joins us at the law to take some questions about our priorities and our candidacy. Hey, Gabrielle.
Hi, T. Thanks so much for having me here.
Thank you for doing this with us. Now, the question some people who do not know you already want to know is, who are you? Tell us all about Gabrielle.
That is actually the hardest question. Who am I? I am somebody who brings endless energy, endless devotion, high ethics, a hard worker, a real community activist, and a practical common sense approach to what needs to be done so that we can focus and get what everybody here in the community needs to keep them safe.
That's a very beautiful answer. Thank you so much, Gabrielle. Now, there are several candidates running in this ward with you. What do you bring differently that the rest of them don't have?
What differentiates me further is that I currently have two businesses. One is my law firm, where I do either free or very low cost work for not-for-profits and vulnerable people, those who speak English as a second language, those who need help as victims of crimes, helping them through the system, or women who are in trouble. And I also am a consultant, and I teach city councilors best practices on how to perform governance oversight, community engagement, and focusing priorities to get things done in the best interests of their community. I have also ran the police commission here, so I have a really good understanding of what works and what doesn't in policing, which is one of the reasons why I'm part of and helped to establish an organization called the Coalition for Canadian Police Reform, where we're looking at creating a national policing college to have a curriculum informed by lived experiences of others, so that police have the right training and the right tools and skills to be able to do their jobs with the actual community members that they encounter. Also, I have created organizations within Edmonton to help vulnerable sectors achieve success and equity, inclusion, and one of those is called Answers, which is an organization for sex workers run by sex workers and is the first one established that is actually a registered not-for-profit. Also, I have worked with all levels of government, federal, provincial, municipal, so I understand the processes, the people, and how to make those relationships work. I will not cast stones at other levels of government and say it's their fault. I am the one that I want you to hold accountable. And I have a deep understanding of finance. I help to govern credit unions across Canada, so I really understand capital, operational, and other financing options. Finally, I have worked with environment, so I understand what's happening in climate. I have also worked in the energy sector, so I understand what Alberta needs to drive its economy forward. I am a small business person. I'm a family person. I'm a mom. I'm a wife. I have a home in this ward, and I will show up to meetings, and I will actually be accountable to you because I want you to hold me accountable. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabrielle. That was exciting to hear, and you come across as very, very experienced. So thank you for a very detailed answer indeed. Now, whilst you were talking, you talked about your plans to take us forward into the future. So what I'd like to give you the opportunity to do is to take us through the priorities as you've listed them on your website. If we vote in a Councillor Battiste, what can the people of O'Damien expect from you?
Well, T, one of the things that I have heard the most on the doorstep is the lack of available and accessible transit options. So unfortunately, what we've done recently with this current council is we have taken away rapid transit options from vulnerable people who most need it, taken it away from seniors, taken it away from students, taken it away from the disabled, and we need to change that. We don't go backwards, but what we do is we push forward with better levels of service, more rapid transit. We invest there. We don't cut that back because everyone contributes to the economy and our tax base, and we deserve what we pay for. So another thing that as a priority, aside from making sure that this city is accessible to the people who need to be able to move around it, is to make sure that it is affordable and inclusive. So I have a 27-year-old son. He's autistic. He's a cancer survivor. He's got type 1 diabetes. He is not the only one. Edmonton is touched by everybody who is on a spectrum of mental and physical health. And we need to ensure that what we have here is a community that is inclusive, that welcomes people from other countries, that welcomes diversity, that welcomes new ideas, and is tough on racism. So we need to build those supports into our culture, starting with the city. We need to change the culture at the city. And one of the most important ways to do that is through our CAO in this instance, Chief Administrative Officer, our city manager. He is our one and only employee. So what I would like to see done is to have his performance plan not just published, but changed to be outcomes based. This is what we want to see, and you will show us through these metrics how you're going to achieve these outcomes. Publish it. The same with your leadership team. And then I want our city to be accountable and me as your city councillor to be accountable. So I'm going to publish a report card to you every 3 months. What have I promised you? And exactly what have I done to get you what I've promised? How have I built that consensus on council? Because I'm just one voice. As everyone knows, it's about relationships. It's about finding that common ground, and there is always common ground. So I can find that. I'm very good at it. I build consensus, and I will do my very best to represent this ward. The next thing is that we need to have an innovative and business-friendly environment. So we need to make sure that we support our burgeoning industries, tech industries, our gaming industry, our diverse energy industry that's emerging. We can take our climate change initiatives and do things like focus on retrofitting homes, because existing homes are the ones that produce the most GHG. So what we need to do is put people into our economy working, translating out of other industries into other energy industries to help us move forward our climate change initiatives. So those are just some of the priorities that I have. There are many more, including building a community of care where after this pandemic, we will all feel connected to one another and we will not have that isolation again. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabrielle. Oh, wow. You unpacked several things there, which I'm going to try to go through right now. Now, one of the things you talked about was a report card for the city manager, and that is so exciting. I love that idea. You also talked about accountability, how we can keep our officials accountable. But the first thing that comes to my mind is, isn't it going to bring much more red tape, much more bureaucracy, much more admin on top of layers of admin on top of layers of admin? And I think, what are your thoughts on that for starters?
Well, by actually publishing what it is our leadership team is accountable for, we're not adding any administration because we already do it internally. We just don't share it with you. So I think it's about time that we share it with you. And by me publishing my report card to you every 3 months, telling you what I'm doing, that's not going to impact the administration of the city. It will impact me, and it will hold me accountable to you to make sure that I'm doing my job, to make sure that I'm representing residents' interests and not some political party, for instance. And in terms of layers of administration, I don't think that it's going to cause any further issues for us to report quarterly on what we're doing to achieve our most important priorities and objectives, because for Pete's sakes, that's our job. We as a city need to be transparent. We need to communicate effectively. We need to share information. And right now, that information flow is not working. So I need to beef that up.
Oh, thank you for making that clear. One of the things you also mentioned was being tough on racism. As Councillor Battiste, could you please tell us what you would do, what that would look like, being tough on racism? What would that look like under your leadership?
So several of our most effective tools are community organizations. So this is a collaboration. It's not a one agency or one plan will fix this, because we know this is a systemic issue. I mean, our organizations, especially paramilitary organizations, have systemic racist issues. It's built into the system. It's built into the processes. And it's our job as city council to set the tone and culture of the city and to say no more. We're done. And so what that means is, part of it is building this national policing college to make sure that we take a curriculum that's informed by people with lived experience, who've experienced racism, by whomever, whether it's on the street, neighbors, police officers, because it's a systemic issue, whether it's from city officials. It doesn't matter, but we need those experiences informing how to train people and solve that systemic issue so that it doesn't happen from our perspective. And then we need to make sure that the people who enforce the laws have the authority to enforce the laws. So we need to empower that to be able to happen and not cut our authorities off at the knees. And finally, we need to empower our community organizations like Africa Center, like Ladies Corner, like the Center for Intellectual Excellence, to be able to help their own communities, to be able to build up that culture and that collective experience so that this is every common thing, everyday common sense, and is pervasive among Edmonton's society and taken as a for granted thing, that our diversity is one of the most beautiful things that we have to offer.
Thank you, Gabrielle. That was very beautifully answered. Thank you. I've got a question here on climate change. And are your climate plans for the city different or just the same? Could you elaborate or share your ideas on climate change, please?
Climate change is a big issue. I actually, when I was with the province, working in environment, it was actually part of my performance plan, was helping to fix climate change. So what we need to do is we need to start with the plan that we've got that's been built for Edmonton. We need to look at international best practices, and we need to then take into account not only what we can afford, because we need to have some common sense and practicality, but also what our community will be able to deal with. So we are doing things like infill. Infill is very important, but infill also needs to be respectful of the neighborhoods and communities. It's important to densify, because if you densify, you decrease what's called urban sprawl, and that helps decrease the need for vehicular traffic or more infrastructure. Another thing is, like I mentioned previously, retrofitting homes and providing grants and incentives and opportunities for people to do things on their own so that they can make their homes more energy efficient, and investing in hydrogen. So Enoch Cree Nation is putting forward and working on their hydrogen strategy right now. Edmonton needs to follow suit and look at what their opportunities are for alternative energy uses, not only in their vehicles, but also in the way that they burn fuel in other ways.
Thank you very much. Still on climate change, in New York, 11 people died in basements. What do we do here so we're prepared for the effects of very adverse weather, so we don't see what happened in New York happening here in Edmonton?
I mean, that's devastating. It's devastating to communities, families, to our city as a whole. And climate change is not unpredictable. That's the thing. It is trackable, it's trendable. And so when I work with other city councils, it's built into their strategy, into their overall strategic plan, so that they are trend tracking climate change, and they have the resources available already in plans and emergency strategies to be able to instantly carry that out when they need to. They know when it's coming because they've been tracking these across the world. so they have an understanding. Plus, it's really important to review our policies, bylaws, and processes from a climate perspective. Are those processes capable of withstanding dramatic changes in climate? So those are two of the ways that we can deal with that.
Well, thank you. Your answers are well thought of. So I'm liking that you're thinking through your lawyer as well. So thank you for well thought of questions. And we're nearly done. On your website, you write one of your action points is focus on building a smart, intelligent, and vibrant core. What does this even mean? Vibrant core. What is this?
I mean, it's a great question. People use a lot of words, right? And what meaning does that word actually have? In other words, don't just talk the talk, walk the walk. So our number one legislated duty as a council is to give you a safe and viable / vibrant city and community. That is our number one job under law. And quite frankly, right now, we're not living up to our requirements under law. So what I would like to see is more investment into our local and small business economy. They are the economic drivers of our city. We need to be able to have them at the table when we start to plan policies, bylaws, and processes, throughout that process, and afterwards for feedback. We need to reduce the red tape that's inherent in our administration. We have to move from administration to facilitation. Our job is a service provider. We need to facilitate our economy. We need to not be bogged down by checking boxes to make sure we fit you into our appropriate square. We need to be flexible and adaptable, and we can build that into our bylaws, policies, and processes, and our culture. That's where it starts. So another thing is I need to make sure that we have the right people at the right place at the right time to make well-informed decisions based on good information. And that starts with bringing together diverse groups, developers, construction, communities, arts and culture. Everyone who lives in the community that's affected needs to have a say in what's happening. Will it take more time? Perhaps. But if you do it well, we won't need to redo it. And anytime you look at how we've re-envisioned and reimagined Jasper for the last 20 years, where we've dug up repeatedly different sides, or any other areas through the city where we've done exactly the same thing, you understand why planning is important.
Thank you very much, Gabrielle. Thank you so much. I've got two more questions. I want you to shed some light on when you talk about investment in local businesses. LCC Media is a local business. Yes. Okay, so I want to hear more about what you would do to empower local businesses. And okay, let's start there. Thank you.
So we need to uplift our local businesses and invest in them in terms of using LCC Media, Ladies Corner, to highlight the amazing women of color in our community who are creating their own businesses, their own vision, building their own community. We need to invest in having the magazine at places of business. We need to invest in other local businesses. We need to work with places like Africa Center. We need to work with places like Autism Edmonton. We need to work with all of those community organizations, empower them, and then take advantage of the amazing product and intelligence that they produce to leverage for our city and highlight them as our success story, because small business is our success story.
That's correct. Thank you very much. So could you talk about how do we empower our neighborhoods so they will have meaningful say on what happens in our communities? And I say this because sometimes it's really hard to engage the community. How do you plan to bring the community out so that they engage and so that they have a say in what goes on and so that they feel included? Thank you.
That's a great question, because not everybody is in the place on the mental health spectrum or the physical health spectrum where they can reach out themselves. And so it's important for me as a city councillor, and quite frankly for all city councillors, to spend quite a bit of personal time in the community, knocking on doors, going not just before election, but continually throughout your term, throughout my term, going out, speaking door to door, specifically seeking out areas of community I know are not engaging so that I proactively engage them. It's my job to proactively go and get information and to make sure that people feel included. So that is one way I'll do that. The second way is through that report card that I want to give to people every 3 months, where I report to you on what I'm doing for you, how I'm doing it, and how far we have to go. Because in that way also, hopefully, there will be more engagement.
Fair enough. Okay. Thank you very much, Gabrielle. Now, if people are wanting to find out more about your campaign, more about you, more about your priorities, more about your platform, where do they go to find out more?
Thank you, T. So please go to www.gabrielle4yeg.com. That's my website. You can also find me on all social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram at Gabrielle4yeg with the number 4 again. And before I sign off, I just want to mention one more thing. One of the most important responsibilities and accountabilities I have as a councillor to you is to represent the people of my ward and all Edmontonians and not be affiliated with a political party. I am one of the only people who has signed the AUMA oath and pledge, and not only just signed it, I rewrote it and made it better and stronger so that I will not be backed by a political party. I am not Liberal, NDP, or UCP. I am not aligned with a specific mayor because I am here to represent the people of this city and not toe a party line. That's very important. Please make sure that that's something you take into consideration. Thank you. Thank you so much, T.
Thank you so much, Gabrielle. We wish you all the best as we go into the election season properly this fall. Thank you again for your time.